The teasing and stupid jokes about skin color started right away, but when he touched me without my consent, he crossed the line. But the moment he raised his hand to hit her, he made a mistake he would never forget. She didn't just react, she punished him in return. Jasmine Carter lowered her head as she made her way through the crowded hallways of Pinebrook High School, trying not to bump into anyone or make eye contact with the other students. At 17, she was once again a newcomer in an unfamiliar environment. This was her third school in 5 years, the price of growing up in a military family. Her father's transfer meant a new city every time, and with it, new hallways, new rules, and exhausting attempts to understand a completely new hierarchy. At 5 feet 3 inches, with a thin build, stubborn curls that frizzed in the humid Tennessee air, and thick glasses perched on sharp green eyes, Jasmine didn't fit in, not that she ever tried to. But no one in Pinebrook knew what her former classmates couldn't understand until it was too late. Jasmine had been practicing martial arts since she was 7. Her father, a retired Navy sniper, would not allow any objections. 11 years of sparring and sweat had turned her into someone few could stand up to. She was fast, deadly when she needed to be, and had a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, though she rarely mentioned it. Her father had always told her that strength came from control, not violence. To know how to fight is to know when not to fight, he reminded her. Pinebrook School stood on the outskirts of town like a fortress, huge, housing nearly 2,800 students divided into predictable social groups. Jasmine had walked its halls for only 16 days, but that was enough to form an impression of the school. In the hallway behind the pool, guys from the university team exchanged insults like footballs. The alley near the teacher parking lot reeked of cigarettes and bad behavior. But the real trouble brewed near the food and drink vending machines by the locker rooms, in the so-called Sovereign's territory. Their leader was Mason Callahan, a senior with slicked-back hair and trendy jackets. His inner circle included Brett O'Connor, a football player with a dumb expression and a tiny brain, and Chase Huxley, a wiry guy with a huge nose and a cruel sense of humor. Together, they ruled the school with smug confidence and practically ran it, bullying the nerds. Jasmine heard the whispers before she even opened her locker on her first day. "Stay away from Mason," a girl named Kira whispered at orientation, looking around nervously. "They bully the new kids every semester." Last fall, a sophomore had to transfer to another school. For 2 weeks, Jasmine managed to stay under the radar. She took detours to school, ate lunch sitting on the steps of the art building, and tried not to stand out. But that's not always possible, not in a place like this. It all started with something small. She was rushing to chemistry class, loaded down with textbooks, when she turned a corner and bumped into Brett. He grinned. "Watch where you're going, chocolate bar," he said sharply, looking her up and down as if she were some kind of exhibit. "Sorry," she muttered as she walked past him. He called after her. "Hey, you're new here, aren't you? What's your name?" She didn't stop. "Jasmine." He repeated it slowly, drawing out the syllables as if it were a joke. "Watch where you're going, Jasmine." As she walked away, she could feel his gaze burning into her back. She had seen that look before. It wasn't curiosity. It was hunger. The kind of hunger bullies have when they're picking on someone. The next morning, when she opened her locker, a rat jumped out and fell to the floor. She barely had time to scream before Chase walked away with a group of seniors. "Oh," he said over his shoulder. "Forgot your sandwich?" By the end of the week, Jasmine had started eating in the cafeteria, hoping it would be safer in a public place. She was halfway through her sandwich when Mason sat down across from her. "So," he said, smiling but not looking at her, "you're the new scholarship student, right?" "Jasmine Carter." "Nobody special," she replied, not looking up. "Just trying to fit in," he asked, smiling even wider. "The thing is, new girl, there are rules around here. And rule number 1? Know your place." He leaned closer. Spoiler alert, it's not here. Her shoulders tensed. Every nerve in her body was on high alert, years of training telling her what to do. But she continued to breathe slowly, controlling her breathing the way her coach had taught her. She calmly picked up her tray, ready to leave. But Mason grabbed her wrist. Not hard, not painful, just enough to say, "Don't you dare leave until I'm done with you." Her instincts kicked in. She could have thrown him across the table in 2 seconds flat. But instead, she did what a quiet new kid was supposed to do. She pulled her hand away and walked away, hearing laughter behind her. From that moment on, things only got worse. Her clothes were stolen from the locker room and scattered around the hallway. Someone smeared glue on her locker. Students she had never spoken to whispered when she walked by, spreading rumors she couldn't trace. They laughed at her glasses, her clothes, and the fact that she looked like a homeless person. Anonymous insults were written on stickers and plastered all over the school. When the teacher turned to the blackboard, crumpled pieces of paper flew at the back of her head. Nothing new. Jasmine had been through this before, at another school. Same story, just another day for a black girl, especially one who wears glasses. She lowered her head and told herself she could survive by not reacting to anything, and that eventually they would calm down. In the evenings, Jasmine trained in the garage her father had converted into a small gym. She took out her anger on the punching bag, throwing punch after punch, trying to remind herself why she was silent. Resistance only made things worse and gave them exactly what they wanted. They wanted a fight, a reaction. But Mason and his gang didn't accept silence. They were used to people breaking down, crying, screaming, begging. Jasmine's calmness seemed to only anger them more, and that made them push even harder. About 3 weeks into the semester, Jasmine stayed after school in the library to finish a group project. When she was finally ready to leave, the hallways were almost empty. On her way to the parking lot, she made a detour past the locker rooms. And that's when she saw them. Mason stood in front, with Brett and Chase on either side, like bodyguards. There was no one else around. Well, look who we have here, Mason said, his voice echoing off the walls. All alone, Jasmine? She adjusted the straps of her backpack and kept looking ahead. I'm going home. That's all. Mason grinned and looked at the other two. Did you hear that? She wants to go home and tell her mommy that she's being bullied at school. I saw her in gym class, Brett added with a smirk. She always hides in the locker room when it's time to change, probably embarrassed about what she's got. Jasmine blushed. It was true, she did change in a secluded spot. But it wasn't because she was embarrassed. She just didn't want anyone to see her muscular arms and legs, the result of her training. Go away, she said quietly but firmly. I just want to go home. Chase moved closer. Is that all? You have nothing else to say? She didn't answer. She wasn't going to answer. That was her rule. It had been her rule at her last school and the one before that. Keep your head down. Don't get involved in other people's business. Sooner or later, they'd move again. But her father had told her that this time would be different. This school was supposed to be the last one. No more moving. No more new beginnings. She was going to make it work. I just want to go home, she repeated, hating the quiet sound of her voice. Mason stood directly in front of her, blocking her way. You want to know what your problem is, Jasmine? You act like you're better than everyone else. You're quiet, like you're too good to talk to anyone. You're not fooling anyone. Yeah, Chase chimed in, his tone even colder. People say you look at them like they're trash. You think you're special. Jasmine didn't even try to defend herself. She knew they had already made up their minds. She was their target. Nothing she said would change that. Leave me alone, she said, louder this time, feeling the tension building in her chest. Are you leaving? Mason asked, taking a step forward. Before she could move, Brett came up behind her. He was too close. Then she felt his hand slide down her back, his fingers digging into her skin. Maybe she just needs a little affection, he said with a disgusting smirk. Show her how we treat newbies around here. At that moment, Jasmine felt everything inside her freeze. Her heart stopped beating. Her breathing didn't falter. Time simply slowed down. She felt Brett's hand on her, and it was as if someone had flipped a switch. Without thinking, her body reacted, pure instinct, honed by years of training. Jasmine spun around, grabbed Brett's wrist so quickly and hard that he gasped, and with one smooth motion, twisted his arm behind his back. Using his own weight, she slammed his face into the wall of the locker with a loud thud. What the? Mason began to say, but didn't have time to finish. Jasmine had already let go of Brett, who fell to the floor in a daze, moaning. She didn't hesitate, she turned directly to Mason. She moved faster than anyone could have expected. With one swift motion, she swept his legs out from under him, and he fell heavily to the ground, landing on his back. A sharp groan escaped his throat. Chase, seeing his friends taken down in seconds, screamed and lunged at her with rage in his eyes. Jasmine shifted her weight, dodged to the side, grabbed his arm, and using his momentum, threw him over her hip. He fell next to Mason, and the sound of the impact echoed off the wall. It was all over in maybe 10 seconds. Jasmine stood between them, breathing evenly, her body still tense as if she were ready to continue. This was no surprise to her. Almost all girls go through this. Don't ever touch me with your filthy hands again, she said in a low, steady voice. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. Just stay away. Brett was the first to get to his feet. He stumbled a little, his face red not only from the pain. He looked stunned, confused, and angry all at once. "You're crazy," he muttered, clenching his fists. "No," Jasmine said, adjusting her glasses. "I have honor and dignity." She stepped over Mason, who was still gasping on the floor, and headed for the street. Only when the cool breeze touched her face did she allow herself to breathe. Her hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear, from adrenaline. The tension that had been building for weeks had finally broken free. And although she knew her father would most likely be furious, deep down she knew he would understand. It wasn't about bragging. It was about self-defense. Jasmine didn't know they weren't alone in the hallway. Kira, the girl who had warned her a few weeks ago, had climbed the side stairs and seen everything. By the next morning, everyone knew. The children whispered as she walked by. Conversations broke off mid-sentence. But it wasn't like before. No one laughed. No one teased her. Just wide eyes and quiet glances. "Is it true?" someone asked as she walked to her locker. "Did Kira catch you before class? Did you really teach all three of them?" Jasmine felt her stomach churn. "I don't want to talk about it," she replied quietly. "I heard they wanted to touch you," said another girl who had obviously been there. "Did you throw bread over your hip?" "That's not true," Jasmine replied, but the rumors had already spread. Mason told everyone that he let her win. But Chase had a huge bruise on his thigh, and Brett couldn't even turn his neck. Jasmine closed her eyes for a second. This was what she had been trying to avoid, all the stares, the rumors, the made-up stories. But what had happened couldn't be undone. She spent the rest of the morning wandering around school in a daze, hearing whispers behind her and noticing people glancing at her and then quickly looking away. By lunchtime, she had heard at least 5 different versions of the fight, each more incredible than the last. Some said she had knocked out all 3 boys. Others claimed she had a weapon in her backpack. One freshman told anyone who would listen that Jasmine was involved in some kind of secret military program organized by the government. But the strangest thing was that Mason, Brett, and Chase were nowhere to be found. They weren't at their usual table in the cafeteria. They weren't wandering the hallways between classes. It was as if they had simply vanished. Jasmine sat alone in the cafeteria, slowly moving her food around her tray, trying not to look at the table where the boys usually sat. Then she noticed someone sitting down in the chair across from her. She looked up. It was Mason. But he wasn't acting like himself. His shoulders were slumped. He wasn't looking her in the eye. And there was a dark bruise on his neck, where he had hit the ground the day before. "What's wrong?" Jasmine asked immediately, not hiding her suspicion. Mason looked around nervously, feeling all eyes on him. "I just wanted to say that yesterday shouldn't have happened," he muttered. Jasmine interrupted him. "It won't happen again if you and your friends leave me alone." He nodded slowly, then looked at her. "That's fair." There was a pause. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" She couldn't help it. A slight smile appeared on her face. "My dad started teaching me when I was 7. I've been doing mixed martial arts since I was 10. I have a black belt in jiu-jitsu." Mason blinked. "That's really cool." At that moment, the loudspeaker crackled. "Jasmine Carter, report to the principal's office." "Jasmine Carter, report to the principal's office." She exhaled. She had been waiting for this. "Someone ratted us out," she said, standing up and grabbing her backpack. "It wasn't me," Mason said quickly. And no one else said anything. "We didn't say anything." Jasmine looked at him. He didn't look like he was lying. "Thanks, I guess," she said and walked toward the office. She braced herself for the worst. Most schools had a zero-tolerance policy for fighting. A few punches could mean suspension or even expulsion. Her parents would be called in to talk about her anger issues and how to better handle conflicts. She had already been through all of this at another school, which she had finally dropped out of after months of bullying. The saddest part? The kids who had pushed her to this point got off with nothing more than a warning. Principal Hawkins was already sitting at her desk when Jasmine entered. She was a stern woman with short gray hair and sharp blue eyes. She nodded to Jasmine, inviting her to sit down in the chair across from her. "Miss Carter," she said calmly, "I've received several disturbing reports about yesterday's incident." Jasmine nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Would you like to explain what happened?" And Jasmine told the truth. No excuses, no embellishments. She explained how the boys had been bullying her for weeks. She told her what had happened near the locker room, how they had cornered her, how Brett had touched her, and how she had used the skills her father had taught her to defend herself. "I know fighting is against the rules," she said quietly, "and I'll accept whatever punishment you give me. But I want it to be clear, I didn't start it. I was just defending myself." Principal Hawkins listened without saying a word. Her expression didn't change. Then she leaned forward, folding her arms. Miss Carter, you know we have security cameras in all the main hallways, right? Jasmine felt her heart sink. No, ma'am. Well, we do. And I reviewed yesterday's footage. She picked up the remote, turned to the small screen behind her, and pressed play. The video was black and white and a little grainy, but it clearly showed the boys surrounding Jasmine. You could see Brett reach out toward her, and then she quickly and precisely knocked all three of them to the ground without crossing the line. Principal Hawkins paused the video. Sexual harassment is a serious violation of school rules, Miss Carter. So is bullying and physical violence. All three boys are suspended from school. Mr. O'Connor will also face further punishment for touching you without your permission. Jasmine blinked, stunned. I'm not in trouble for defending myself? Of course not. Principal Hawkins' face softened a little. However, she added, next time, I hope you'll try calling for help or talking to a teacher before things get this far. There are other ways to defend yourself that don't end with someone on the floor. Yes, ma'am, Jasmine said, feeling some of the weight lift off her chest. The principal nodded slightly. Still, your skills are impressive. Our girls' self-defense club could use someone like you. If you're interested, I'd love to have you as a volunteer instructor. It could be a great way to put your skills to use in a positive way. For the first time in weeks, a genuine smile appeared on Jasmine's face. I'd love to, she thought. When she returned to class, the whispers had not died down, but now they were different. Word quickly spread that the boys had been suspended, and a new rumor emerged. Instead of being punished, Jasmine had been asked to help teach self-defense. By the end of the day, 3 girls approached her and asked if she could show them how she had flipped Brett. The atmosphere had completely changed. The real change came the following week when Mason, Brett, and Chase returned from suspension. They kept their heads down and avoided Jasmine completely. Brett seemed particularly nervous. He wouldn't look at her and would walk away when she was nearby. Then, on Wednesday, something unexpected happened. Jasmine was sitting with Kyra and a few other girls at lunch when Mason approached their table. The conversation stopped. Everyone fell silent. Can I talk to you? He asked, keeping his eyes on Jasmine. She hesitated for a second, then stood up. I'll be right back, she said to the others and followed him to a quieter spot in the corner of the dining room. She kept her distance. What's going on? She asked. Mason rubbed the back of his neck. He looked nervous, as if this was the last thing he wanted to do. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. It wasn't a very convincing apology, but his red cheeks spoke louder than words. Okay, Jasmine replied in an even voice. Is that all? What do you want me to say? Mason asked, shrugging his shoulders. That you forgive me? I'm not expecting that. I'm not sure I deserve it. She crossed her arms but didn't interrupt him. I've been thinking a lot these past 2 weeks, he continued. Trying to figure out why I act the way I do. I don't like where I've ended up. You don't have to, Jasmine said. I know. He sighed. My father, he was always strict with me. He always said, don't let anyone push you around, or real men don't put up with nonsense. I thought that meant acting like him, but it didn't make me stronger, it made me a tyrant. Jasmine hadn't expected him to open up like that. She looked closely at his face. He looked different. Not softer, but more honest. As if he wasn't pretending for the first time. You don't have to be like him, she said after a moment. You get to decide who you want to be. I want to be better, he said quietly. I just don't know how. She thought for a second. Well, you could start by helping me. I teach self-defense classes for girls at the club. I need an assistant for demonstrations. Mason blinked. You want me to help you? After everything that happened? It's not about you, Jasmine said. It's about showing the girls how to defend themselves. And maybe it'll help you understand what it's like to be on the other side. A slow smile spread across Mason's face. You're kind of scary, you know that. Okay, Jasmine said with a small smile. Remember that the next time you want to scare someone. Over the next few weeks, unexpected changes took place at Pinebrook School. The self-defense club grew rapidly. Jasmine held classes twice a week, and Mason kept his word. He came, let her demonstrate the moves on him, and took everything with a smile, even when the other girls laughed when he fell on the mat. Even more surprising, Chase joined the art club and began using his drawing skills for something more creative rather than violent. Brett, after a serious conversation with his football coach about respect for others, became the most polite guy in school, awkwardly apologizing to those he had once bullied. For the first time in a long time, Jasmine had real friends. Girls who loved her for who she was, not just a quiet new girl, but a strong and honest one. Kira and the other girls in the club started sitting with her at lunch. Soon she was being invited to group activities, movie nights, and weekends away. About a month after all this happened, something happened to her on her way home. She was halfway there when she heard someone running after her. She turned around and saw Brett catching up to her, slightly out of breath. "Hi," he said. "Can I walk with you? I'm going that way too." Jasmine nodded slightly, remaining cautious but open. They walked in silence until Brett finally spoke. "I never apologized," he said. "For trying to," he trailed off, blushing. "For groping me?" Jasmine finished for him, without hesitation. He nodded, his eyes downcast. "Yes. That was awful. Really awful. I'm sorry." She kept walking, but didn't respond right away. "Why did you do that?" she finally asked. He was silent for a long time. "Honestly? Because I thought I could. Because Mason and Chase were watching. Because I thought it would make me look cool. We thought that's what you do to girls like you. Like me." Jasmine repeated. "You know," he said quietly. "The ones who don't fight back. But you fought back. And you were right to do so. What I did wasn't just wrong. It was disgusting." Jasmine looked at him. "You're right. But thank you for telling me." They walked a few more steps before he spoke again. "My younger sister signed up for your self-defense class," he said. "Lily. She's a freshman." Jasmine nodded. She remembered Lily, a quiet girl with soft blonde hair like Brett's, but without the false confidence. "I'll keep an eye out for her," Jasmine said. "Have you ever been underestimated because of your looks?" Share your experience in the comments below. If you like this story about fairness, hit the like button and subscribe to hear more inspiring stories that remind us of what's really important in life. And tell us, what part of the world are you watching from? We're very interested.